The questions we ask when processing data into answers can mean the difference between data being a commodity, something everyone has, to being a competitive advantage. It is often in the processing of the data more than in the data itself a company can build its competitive edge. Back in 2019, we're meeting with this team who has a treasure trove of available data. But they were unhappy. Why? Because with all this new data, they still weren't coming up with any original ideas. And the reason was because they kept asking this new data the same old questions. And if you keep asking the same questions, you'll keep coming up with the same answers. It is only when you ask new questions that you will be able to come up with new answers. So let me share two examples. In one of our projects, we were looking for new opportunities related to medical professionals. We had a lot of old research where we removed the narrative and got left with only the data. And then we start asking this data new questions in order to uncover new perspectives. One of those was that we were able to identify 3 significant situations where the medical professional shows up throughout the day, and within each of these situations we were able to uncover new insights. We were able to uncover huge opportunities for efficiencies by identifying waste, and we were able to identify new opportunities for value because how we interpreted the needs of the medical professional changed when we start asking new questions and looking at it through new perspectives. The second example changed the game entirely. So every model is a simplification of the world boiled down to its most essential part from that perspective. And what is very common to use in our industry is a patient pathway, which means not too different from a customer journey. You map a patient from symptom to diagnosis to treatment, etc. Now what we found is that we can do that through the lens of the patient's feelings. Because it turns out that when the patient wakes up in the morning, they're not thinking about the pathway. They're not thinking about where am I now and where do I need to go next and how do I get there. What they're thinking about is how they feel. And we found that through that lens, we were able to discover new places, new partnerships, new opportunities for the industry to show up and produce value for the patient, for the system, and for ourselves. What I hope I demonstrated through this video is that we look at the world through a limited set of perspectives. And each of those helps us see opportunities where we can show up and create value. But that the way to gain a competitive advantage is not necessarily to identify or amplify opportunities from perspectives that everyone else is looking through, but to identify new perspectives that introduce completely new value. And the way to do that is not necessarily by filling up the organization with more data, but is to start asking new questions of the data we already have.